And with all the strange weather that's been going about, we welcome Ride SES. It's Warren Smith.
Good morning, Lindsay. Good morning, listeners.
And thanks for being with us today, Warren.
Yeah.
It's been a wet week.
It certainly has. Probably it's been well seen on what has been happening, first up in Queensland and then in northern New South Wales. I think people have been talking about this east coast low that's been hanging off the coast and it's been impacting. The important thing about an east coast low that I would want residents to know is it's very slow moving and it's very unpredictable. And so even though we've seen some shocking things in further north, we're not completely out of the woods yet, possibly.
Everybody was predicting very heavy rains, in 200 millimetre rains in Sydney and around Ryde and so forth, but it hasn't happened.
Yeah, well, in Ryde, we've been preparing for the worst and hoping for the best, and it's been an amazing thing that residents have done, is that it's the first time in 15 years I've seen where people have actually taken a proactive approach. The preparedness has been excellent. So we've had sandbags available. So we've given out over 1,200 sandbags. That's about 20 tonne of sand in bags. And people have been taking their own action to prepare for possible flooding. So one of the important things I would say to those people and anybody else is it might not be over. We're quietly optimistic that we might have seen the worst of it, but with an east coast low, it is unpredictable. So I just wouldn't be thinking we're completely out of the woods just yet.
Right. So besides sandbags, what are some of the other things that you've heard people do?
So one of the things that should happen is with an east coast low, what you're going to do is get strong wind gusts. So what you should be thinking about is looking around your backyard and on your balconies, looking at things that could fly around in a high wind. It's the wind gusts that are quite damaging. In a bad event, you could get 90 to 120 kilometre-hour winds. So things like light outdoor furniture and things like that, they can become missiles. So you look around your yard and just pack those away or tie them down. The other things is, flash flooding, so stay away from canals and creeks and things like that, because in Ryde what happens is we get flash flooding, so it comes very, very quickly and unpredictable.
I'm just thinking about some of those low-lying parks. There's things like Meadowbank Park, Morrison Bay Park, Bill Mitchell Park. They're all down by the river, but there's a reason why there's never been built on.
Yep. So in Ryde, we are very much aware of where our flood risks are. So in the last few days, we've had flood rescue teams that have actually been out and moving about, keeping an eye on all those areas, so that it's something we don't tell the public, but we're very much aware from history of where those risks are. So that I would want the public to know that, we are monitoring that and we've got teams out there. But it's a matter of people should stay away from all those risk areas. If you're a local, you'll know where those flood hotspots are.
Yeah, some of them pretty spectacular, I'd imagine, if they're full of water, but your advice is, as spectacular as they may be, stay away.
Yep, because I've been trained in flood water and I can guarantee you it would only take a few inches or millimetres of depth. You'd be surprised. And what happens is the power of that water, it doesn't have to be deep to knock you off your feet. It's slippery and you could end up in a real mess. And the suction could suck you into a drain, and children and things like that. It distresses me to see that sort of vision on TV.
Right, so a lot of advice has been, if you don't need to, be on the road, don't be on the road, stay at home. Yep. That applies to the kids as well.
So one of the things we always say is never to drive, ride or walk in floodwater. And I'd extend that to don't let your children play in floodwater either. If it's flooded, forget it.
Right, and you also say that Ryde Council have got a number of maps out there about flood zones, so if you do need to go to the doctors or you do need to go somewhere essential, that you can map yourself out a safer way to get there.
So we're very fortunate in Ryde that someone had the vision to not have copyrights on those flood maps. So they're freely available. So if you go into a search engine on the internet and type in Ryde flood-prone areas, that will lead you into 4 flood studies. You determine which one of those you need. If you look at the attachments of those flood studies, they'll have maps. So a good one to look at would be a 1 in 100 year event, and that will show you the depth of the water and the direction it's going to come. So you can then work out they're high resolution PDFs, so you can zoom in and actually see your house, your street. From that, you can then develop a plan of how you need to get from A to B. And it might not be that if you're home, it could be where you work, it could be where your children are at school, or where family and relatives and things like that. But by having that knowledge, you'll be far better prepared for an emergency.
All right. Well, Warren Smith of the Ryde SES, we thank you very, very much for that advice this very wet week.
So what I would leave you with is never drive in floodwater. Be safe and stay dry.
Thank you, Warren.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Resident.